SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Never take your heart health for granted. For just $99, you can get a complete screening and know your risks. Call 601-249-5198 to schedule your Happy Healthy Heart screening at Southwest Mississippi Regional Medical Center.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
All right, we got the National Weather Service coming on with us in the next segment. So what's the latest that we have here for the folks with respect to the weather? I know that we still got a lot of people out there in the great state of Mississippi that are without power, though there have been numerous reports indicating that progress is being made, and that's a good thing. But a lot of people still without power, without water as well. But, man, we just had our weekly meeting, and it appears that there are a number of external organizations that have descended upon the northern tier of our state to help out, to assist. And I don't want to leave anybody out, but just a long list of organizations, and of course our statewide leaders, our city leaders, and various third-party private organizations all busy to get things back to normal. But, man, it just left a big old mess, and you saw that same system, right, move through the east coast of the country. North Carolina really had it socked to them. Saw lots of reports of vehicles stranded out on the interstates, the highways, including 18-wheelers. But you don't see that very often, but they got stuck en route. Anything in particular, Rhino, that we can share with the folks? I know the governor and others having rather continuous press releases and press conferences. Anything in particular that we can pass on?
Yeah, it looks like for the most part the extreme cold weather is out of the way, which should be good news for getting people hooked back up with water and power. As for power, we've been reporting on Tippah County a lot because we got that announcement right after the whole shebang started. It's going to be a couple weeks for some folks. There are still 8,264 households in Tippah County without power.
Man.
That's 60% of the houses without power, but that is better than the 98% it was at the start of all this. Across the Magnolia State in general, I'm seeing reports of around 50,000 still without power. Lafayette County is topping the list with 8,600. Tippah's got that 8,200. Pinola's got 7,500. Tishomingo's got 6,500. And then you get into the ones with smaller populations, but still thousands of people out, like Yalobusha, 3,500 people out of power. Alcorn, 3,000 people without power.
Man.
So, yeah, we are more than a week away from this, or more than a week past this, and it's still an issue for some folks. There is a little bit of hope. I think it was announced earlier this morning on Mornings with Richard Cross that Elon is bringing in 500 generators for those very people we were talking about in Tippah.
Yeah.
And there are some questions about, well, why Tippah? And it seems like the same reason we were talking about why are we talking so much about Oxford last week, because that's where the majority of the ice went. Well, now it looks like the greatest need and the longest wait to get power is going to be in Tippah County. So Elon coming through and sending 500 generators to the people of Tippah County.
Well, that's good news, and we appreciate that update. So that was awfully generous of Mr. Musk to send those generators in. Now, I know people, as you indicated, may be asking why Tippah County, because it appears that based on the estimates and based on what the power company told us, it's going to take longer to restore power there than any of the other counties, regions of our state, right? I think that was kind of the idea.
There's just more damage to the infrastructure.
Yeah, right.
It's like we talked about last week. If it were just, oh, well, this one tower's down, but we can run lines the whole way, we just got to fix this one tower. Well, that's not a quick fix. That's still several hours getting it fixed, but that's just a tower. If you got a whole street of towers, then that's going to take a while just to get that one street up. So that's why you have some places where it's going to be still a few more weeks. Yeah.
We're concerned about that for sure, and we're tracking it. We were talking earlier about you shared some data with us in our meeting about the contrast between this storm and the 94 storm that I think everybody kind of looks at, I should say, is really the benchmark for terrible winter storms. Everybody kind of remembers that year, 94. That's when the big one came through. But it actually turns out more people were affected, more, I guess, addresses with respect to power outages.
It's evidence that we have learned from the 94 storm. Changes were implemented after the 94 storm, and this storm likely wasn't as bad as the 94 storm, because in 94, you had, at the height of people being without power, 750,000 Mississippians without power in 94.
Right.
At the height of this one, it never eclipsed 200,000. It got right up close to 200,000, but just shy of 200,000 Mississippians were without power this go-round. That's a big difference. And I think, like I said, that's evidence that lessons were learned in 94 that have been the lessons learned and the changes and the solutions have been implemented since 94, because, I would hope so. It's 30-plus years. But also, that's cold comfort for people that are still sitting in a house with a hole in the ceiling or no power, and it's been a whole week and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt. So, you have to extend our gratitude to those linemen in particular and first responders and lots of other folks involved in the recovery efforts. But I know these linemen are working literally around the clock to get the electricity turned on. It's just one of those things that there's no way to anticipate. And I know we were talking about it. There have been some complaints registered from the people of Mississippi feeling like that government should have been more prepared, better prepared. I don't know exactly what they could have done. And I'm sure, as is always the case, there will be a post-mortem analysis on this. But
not to be too cold-hearted, but there is a sizable chunk of those people that are complaining that would complain no matter what. And there's another portion of that population that's complaining that would be complaining if they had spent tax dollars on snowplows and salt trucks, and they were just sitting there. Because the last time this happened at this magnitude or near this magnitude was more than 3 decades ago.
Yeah, and that's really, it's like insurance, right? How much are you willing to pay? And it's one of those things where you could pay a whole lot more and be better prepared and mitigate risk, but are you willing to pay more for that purpose? I'm just using that as an analogy here. So is that to say that in reviewing this event and all the response that the folks in charge won't figure out ways to improve? No, I think they will. I think that will occur. And of course, these are always teaching moments and learning experiences. That's not making excuses, but I think it's the truth. So, and certainly not trying to be cavalier and uncaring about it whatsoever. But I guess I see that it's not like people aren't working their rears off on this. I think we have to admit that, do we not? And again, could it get better? Well, sure. Anything could. Let's be honest. The same people complaining, and I hope this doesn't come across as crass and harsh, but they could probably do better at their jobs as well. We all could. And so when you see situations like this, you consume the information. You process it. You analyze it. You review it. And you hope that you can prepare better in the, God forbid, next time it happens. So, but man, I just want to make sure that we're at least grateful to those who are, in fact, working their rears off to restore the power and to get just life returned to normal. And we're appreciative to them. Hopefully, we'll get through this as soon as possible. National Weather Service is up next.
God's golden shore. He'll meet you on God's golden shore.
Hello, my name is John.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe. I got you.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We got Logan Poole, meteorologist from the National Weather Service, on with us. Hey, Logan, thanks for coming on.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Happy to be here.
All right, so give us the latest. It appears that it's going to warm up a little bit in the Magnolia State today. What are we looking at?
We're looking at 47 on the thermometer right now here at the Jackson Airport, where our office is located. Temperatures similar across the state as we head up to the lead up to noon. We do think temperatures this afternoon, with some luck, will maybe even crack 60 degrees here at the airport. And if you're in the northern part of the state, things are going to be a little bit chillier. We got visible satellite imagery pulled up that we've been monitoring, and there is still, even now, across portions of northwest Mississippi, just a blanket of ice that is still on the ground. So some folks up there are still dealing with that, and that helps, unfortunately, keep those temperatures tamped down some. But most folks today are going to be in the 50s, maybe even some of the lower 60s across south and southwest portions of the state. And at least up north, we think that we'll see at least some thawing temperatures today as temperatures rise up above freezing across the area.
Okay, so maybe that's some good news. Now, what's the long-term outlook? Are we possibly looking at another round of this wintry weather next week?
There's been some rumors, and this is what I can say to that. The pattern is very active. I think everyone around here knows that, at least. That shouldn't come as any surprise. We even had some flurries across the area on Saturday with just a few clouds, which if anybody was out and about and looked around, me personally, I thought that was just the oddest sight. Those clouds, they didn't look like they belonged in winter.
Sorry,
it was almost like afternoon showers like you would get in the summer, but in snow instead. So a lot of people saw some flurries then, which was a little unusual. So it shouldn't surprise folks to say that we've been active. We're still in winter. We just have cracked into February here, Groundhog Day for a lot of folks, thinking about that. And then, so we're going to have to be 3, maybe 4 more weeks before we can solidly say that we're starting into, exit into spring. And in the meantime, there will be shots of cold air. And as we've been active the last several weeks to this point, we're going to continue to stay active with multiple cold fronts and storm systems that we'll have to deal with. There is a chance, but I know there's been some rumblings about some bigger event maybe in a week or two, but I'll tell you, that is just one of 100 different possibilities.
Okay.
And right now, we're not really seeing much in the way of a big signal for a major storm soon.
Okay, so just on another note, this wintry weather that swept through the eastern seaboard, in particular, looks like North Carolina got hit really hard. Mm-hmm. Was that the same storm that came through here and just moved in that direction?
That was at least that part of the storm was the result of what we saw as we came through this past weekend. So when we had that when we turned sharply colder during the day Saturday, we had that wind and little flurries. To the east of us, things were really starting to get going, and that was a result of what moved through across us. So we kind of just the backside of that system. But I will say it is all connected in that it didn't really stop for an extended period of time. And so you have pieces of energy, upper level atmospheric waves that sort of roll through what we call a trough. And so if you could imagine a roller coaster, the whole thing is a roller coaster, but there's ups and downs within it. So there was pieces of energy that came through that trough, both with the winter weather we saw, where gave us all this ice a little over a week ago, and with that big blizzard they just had. And so it was connected, but I would say there was a little bit of a difference in defining them.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. And then, hard to believe, but I checked the calendar, and it looks like the first week of March we convert to daylight saving time. It's just hard to believe that we're experiencing this cold weather, but in about 5 weeks we're going to have longer days, which I typically associate with warmer weather. What's the outlook over the next 30 days?
Meteorologists, forecasters, we're not a monolith in that what we prefer and don't prefer, and you happen to get the one here that maybe hates the cold.
Okay.
That's just me personally. So I'm going to go. I'm going to be there right there with you, and I'm so excited. Just me, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and others in the state that agree with me. And if you don't, then I can find a different forecaster here. We like to celebrate the cold, but not me.
I'm
we're going
with
to
you.
celebrate the spring. Like you said, we're only a handful of weeks out from what we call meteorological spring, which we start on the 1st of March. We will spring forward, I believe, right at the end of the first week, and we are beginning to, gain substantial amounts of daylight every day. And right now,
I've noticed
we're gaining almost 2 minutes of daylight every day, and that's going to continue for the next 2 months.
I've noticed as well. So, and we may have talked with you before. I can't remember. We have had the pleasure of talking to many of your colleagues as well, but it's a La Nina year, right, as far as the jet stream is concerned?
We have been in mostly a La Nina pattern. There are some signals that may be changing more to a neutral pattern. And what that means, just for people that aren't really aware, we measure temperatures out in, way west of us, out in the Pacific Ocean. That's west of California and Mexico, way out there towards Hawaii. And we can tell if the temperature is near the equator, so the center part of the Earth, near the equator, if the water there in the ocean is warmer or colder than normal.
Yeah.
And so we have thermometers out there measuring that, and satellites. And when it's colder than normal, it does certain things to the atmosphere, and that we can say, okay, this is a La Nina, and when it's warmer than normal, we have an El Nino pattern. And so it has been quite chilly out there in the East Tropical Pacific, but that is seeming to be changed. Now, those La Nina years can be rather erratic. They often feature pretty dramatic shifts in the weather. They don't favor quite as much rain as maybe El Nino would, but they do sometimes favor more of those higher-end events when they do happen. So, and that's kind of what we've seen, honestly. We haven't had a ton of different types of weather events. We've been rather quiet, but when we have had these events, they've been fairly major. So as we shift into a more of a neutral pattern, we'll see what that may bring, and that may come as soon as the spring.
Okay, gotcha. Well, and it also means not quite as wet as an El Nino. Isn't that correct?
That's right, right. A La Nina year sometimes can be drier, not feature not as much precipitation. But like I said before, when you do get the events, you get fewer of them than you would get in El Nino. But when you do get them, sometimes those La Nina events can be real significant. So I'll keep that in mind as we go through. We may not have had as many as we would get in an El Nino year, but we've had a few that were real doozies.
Okay. So something else that came to mind is with this winter storm that came through and just crippled so much of our state. Mm-hmm. Logan, did it affect the National Weather Service's operational ability in any way?
You know, we had quite a few things going on here. Jackson was, or at least for where our office is for us in central Mississippi, was right on the edge of where we got more nuisance ice and some roads that were a little slick locally. And then once you started going northwest, it was much, much worse. But obviously, just like we were telling other people, like we were really, really close. We had some of our own forecasters who bought generators and things like that. I don't think that we weren't telling you the same things we were acting on. That was so true. And I'll tell you, it was for the Jackson Metro. It was crazy close, guys. Yeah. It was really, really close. So we dodged a little bit of a bullet here, but it did require a tremendous amount of effort. We had multiple meteorologists who were staying overnight here at the office to make sure that they would be able to commute and be here to run the service. And we, we're 24/7, 365, and bad weather or great weather, we're still here. So we did have to make some accommodations, even though we did get a little bit more fortunate. Some of our colleagues to the north had more substantial impacts. Weather Service office in Memphis and Nashville. In particular, I know we had even some of our colleagues that came in from out of state at other local offices that did some work in those offices to give them that backup and that ability to rest during that event. So, and it's still an ongoing thing. You know, we had multiple briefings and conversations with you guys and other radio outlets and the governmental partners and emergency managers. So, when we have these major events, we're a little behind the scenes sometimes, but there's a lot of work going on to make sure that everybody is able to be on the same page, know what's coming, and so our partners can communicate that to the people that are listening to them.
Yeah, and the most important thing you said about that, just so the folks will know, it is a 7/24, 365 endeavor.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't even realize that, we are a local service, too. We're part of the federal government.
Right.
But we're here. If you've ever been to, the Jackson Meggers Wiley Airport, we are on that property, and we all live and work where we are neighbors, and it surprises people sometimes. I think they're like, "Oh, you live in Madison County," or "Wow, they didn't realize." And it's like, yeah, no, we were right here with you. We are your neighbors, we're your community, and this is just, we work with you, and we want people to know that when the tornado warnings come out in the spring, for example, that it's not some far off thing that's nebulous or what have you. It's literally your neighbors trying to help you out. So.
Appreciate you coming on, Logan. Logan Poole, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. You have a great one.
Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Okay, campers, rise and shine, and don't forget your booties, because it's cold out there.
It's cold out there every day. What is this, Miami Beach?
Not hardly. And, you can expect hazardous travel later today with that, that blizzard thing.
Oh, that blizzard thing. That blizzard thing. Oh, well, here's the report. The National Weather Service is calling for a big blizzard thing.
Yes, they are. But, there's another reason why today is especially exciting.
Especially cold.
Especially cold, okay. But the big question on everybody's lips.
Yeah, their chapped lips.
On their chapped lips, right.
Lips.
Do you think Phil's gonna come out and see a shadow?
Punxsutawney Phil.
That's right, woodchuck chuckers. It's Groundhog Day. Get up and shake that hog out there.
Yeah. Come here, Groundhog.
Well, it wasn't a good day for those of us who don't like cold weather, right? Because he saw his shadow predicting another 6 weeks of winter. Be gone with you, winter. Tired of it. Oh, my gosh. Appreciate you playing that. In fact, on the C Spire text line, the 228, shout out to Rhino for playing the I Got You Babe clip on Groundhog Day. It's cold out there every day. What is this, Miami Beach? That's awesome. On the C Spire text line, someone, Brian, said from Clarksdale, 94 storm, the roads didn't get this bad, but more poles down. This is worse than Katrina on the 601. Keith and Vaden, what people need to do is stop depending on the government so much, take care of yourself and others. I hear you, Keith, but you can't restore the power. You got to have some help there. And most people can't clear the roads. You got to have some help there. So I don't think it's as much relying on government, and this is, in fact, I would argue, a core function of government to ensure that the roads are passable and coordinate as well, working with all the various organizations to restore normal life and normal operations. I just think this thing caught us, I don't want to say caught us off guard, but Rhino, how in the world would you prepare for something this significant? Such that, man, you had everything just poised, staged, ready to go, pounce on it, and with a few minutes, everything's back to normal. I just don't think that's possible. And again, that's not excusing any potential oversight. I don't know what that would be at this point. I'm not that close to it, not privy to that level of information. But just seems to me like from all the reports I've seen, a lot of people are working really hard to get everything back to normal. And that's small consolation, I know, to those who are without their power. And I've also seen, I have friends in Nashville, got lots of them still out, right? 6 days later as well. And
and they're having to put handmade signs out in front of their yards to tell some people to come by and, hey, the power line's down in the backyard. Y'all keep turning it back on, and then it trips out, and you don't. It's back there. Go back there and fix it.
Oh, man. And did I not see some recommendation? I don't know if this is official, sanctioned or not, but turn your porch lights on if your power's up. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy way for the linemen that are trying to get you re-energized to see, oh, yep, it worked.
Okay.
All those houses lit up.
Okay.
Because, I mean, they're looking for something, so if your porch light, it comes on, that's easier than having to look through a window and see an interior light on.
Sam in Tupelo says, with what I've seen, the ice may have been as bad or worse than 94, but this time it was further north, so the coverage area was smaller in the state. Interesting perspective, Sam. Could be. I certainly don't remember, for what it's worth, Oxford being hit as hard as it was. It got hit hard in 94. This seems worse to me. And I don't even know. I mean, that's very subjective.
Tupelo in 94 was my house, my parents' house in Tupelo was without power for probably a week.
Okay.
A week-ish.
Yep.
And this go-around, Tupelo was pretty much thawed by Tuesday.
Okay. But perhaps didn't receive the same severe effects, right? Just the brunt of the storm maybe stayed a little north. Because, it was kind of, if you looked at that line, it really was more one that didn't parallel our coast, but more was diagonal from the southwest to the northeast, and that kind of carved out the corner. Certainly the western north corner of the state, which included Oxford, and seemed to kind of below that line spared a bit at this point. So, man, oh man. Let's see what else we got here on the C Spire text line. Groundhog Day is one of the dumbest things humanity has ever come up with, said CC in Senatobia. Come on, CC. Gotta laugh a little bit, man. Gotta have a little humor. It's okay. Man, oh man. Rhino loving the GHD music and movie clips. Keep it going. Wade and Jackson says General Beauregard Lee saw his shadow too. Oh, gosh. So something else that has got some folks upset. This is Jerry in Waynesboro. We talked about it a bit in our weekly meeting, and that concerns a bill introduced in the U.S. Senate by Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. And it's a very short bill, by the way, a very short measure, a whopping 2 pages. You don't see many bills that are 2 pages. We need more 2-page bills, by the way, in the Senate of the United States, Rand Paul's measure. And it is called, short title, End Welfare for Non-Citizens Act. That's the short title of the bill. And in general, it would prohibit use of funds to provide benefits to refugees, asylees, and illegal immigrants. Now, it's key to understand that statement from Section 2. That's the title of Section 2. I'll read it again. Prohibition on use of funds to provide benefits to refugees, asylees, and illegal immigrants. Now, you may wonder, why the specificity? Why refugees, asylees, and then illegals in a series, separated? Well, that's actually because refugees, asylees, and parolees and certain green card holders are legal immigrants. They're not citizens, they're non-citizens, but they're in this country legally. They've been authorized to remain in the country on those grounds. Illegal immigrants have not. And there's a clear distinction, and I feel like that really needs to be pointed out anytime we're talking about legislation or benefits that go to non-citizens. There's legal non-citizens and illegal non-citizens. I know it's crazy that it's that nuanced and that complicated. But here's the background on the bill, simply. You guys are familiar with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That was the sweeping legislation passed on July 4th, 2025. Primarily what it did is extend the Trump tax cuts, which were scheduled to expire. Those tax cuts enacted in 2017 in the president's first term. So it passed under the reconciliation process. That means 51 votes, simple majority in the Senate, would, after having passed in the House, send it to the president's desk for enactment. That process is different than the standard lawmaking process in the Senate, where measures require 60 votes to end the filibuster procedurally and then vote and approve the measure. But to stay inside the reconciliation rules, a measure has to go through what's known as a bird bath, and that's named after Senator Robert Byrd, I think from West Virginia, who came up with this reconciliation process and said, look, sometimes we just got to pass stuff that's budgetary related that doesn't need 60 votes. And so the Senate parliamentarian does a thorough review to say, yeah, all those provisions are acceptable under the reconciliation rules to pass with a simple majority. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act is such a measure. But when they're doing these bills, that they pass under reconciliation, they got to stay within certain financial constraints. That means you may be giving tax cuts, and that's considered a reduction of revenue. Well, then you got to cut expenses somewhere else to make all the numbers line up. And where I'm going with this is that bill included exclusion of certain legal immigrants from receiving and participating in the numerous federal assistance programs. I'll get to the rest of it on the other side of the break and tell you how our senators voted.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Babe.
Welcome back, everyone. So just continuing on that discussion there. So Senator Paul, after this bill goes through, by the way, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it notably, while excluding certain classes of legal immigrants from eligibility for these various federal programs, such as subsidies in the ACA, Medicaid, and SNAP, food stamps. Those are the three biggies. And unfortunately, it's complicated. There are about five classes of legal immigrants that have been eligible for those programs for decades. And the bill that passed last July, signed into law by President Trump, excluded them. However, there was a carve-out. You remember, Rhino, I had you look it up. Why in the world was there a carve-out for Cuban and Haitian immigrants and certain green card holders? And what I think we determined is that it goes back to the boat people, right? And I think legislation was passed with 60 votes extending these benefits to the people that were flowing into this country, legitimately escaping oppression in those countries. These were legitimate asylees. I remember seeing it on TV. They're out there in the boats, kids and everything, and the Coast Guard's out there rescuing them, bringing them into Florida. So you couldn't include that in the One Big Beautiful Bill because they require 60 votes. Couldn't pass through simple reconciliation. So they got a carve out. Well, Rand Paul says, the heck with that. I'm going to introduce a bill that's going to also render them ineligible. That's what happened. Now, it's not a whole lot of money in the scheme of things, and I'm not trying to sort of downplay $5 billion, but in a $7 trillion budget, it's not just a huge amount of money because there are not that many people that fall into the remaining category after the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed that were still eligible. Well, that would require 60 votes to pass, but Paul put it out there, probably knowing it wouldn't pass, but there are a number of Republicans who also voted against this measure, and both, just so you know, both of our senators voted against it. And I wouldn't even think about speculating what their rationale was for voting against it. I don't know. But I do know that the bill went down, and something else that we should pay attention to is the fact that the president never came out and spoke up about this legislation. I would say largely that's because he and Rand Paul aren't like on each other's Christmas card list. I think the president has actually floated the idea of primarying the senator and endorsing a primary opponent because the senator is kind of a pain in his side to a great extent. And so is Thomas Massie. In fact, he's come out and said that, is he not? I mean, very directly. We're going to get somebody to run against that Thomas Massie in Kentucky. He on the House side, of course. But I just wanted you guys to know. So our senators voted against Senator Paul's measure that would have rendered these remaining legal immigrants, this small sliver class, eligible. They're still eligible. All the others, after passing the One Big Beautiful Bill Act July 4th, 2025, no longer eligible. Now, then the question is, how good are our systems at making sure? Because you see how dang complicated this gets. And we do have a system, I don't remember what it stands for, it's called the SAVE system, that supposedly records, stores, tracks the citizen/immigration status of every person in the country. I don't have a great deal of confidence that it's error-free. How about that? And totally accurate. And in fact, Our state is supposed to use those systems because that's where you sign up for Medicaid, for SNAP, as an example. That's administered at the state level. And our states are supposed to check that because nobody who's illegal is eligible. Does that mean that none of them get signed up? No, I'm not saying that because that's a systems issue. I will say that my bandmate, I got to give him a shout out here, Representative Dan Eubanks from DeSoto County. He has a measure, in fact, that would clamp down on eligibility checking and enhance that process in the state level, in these systems I'm talking about. And in fact, even though the federal law that passed last year we just talked about requires more frequent eligibility checking in Medicaid and SNAP, in particular in Medicaid, it only applies to the expansion coverage group. Representative Eubanks would apply to everybody. He's drafted a measure that, if became law, would require Medicaid to do more frequent eligibility checks of everybody in the Medicaid program and some other safeguards as well. I like the legislation. I got some other ideas that I think we could make it even better. I'm going to talk to him about it. Band practice later today. We're coming right back after the news with Sarah Adlakah, a candidate for the U.S. Senate.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. It's a 2-hour show today because it's a Monday. Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews comes your way at 12:05. Right now, it's Sarah Adlakah, a candidate for the United States Senate. Good morning, Sarah. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Gerard. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. So tell the folks a little bit about your background and then tell us why you decided to run for the United States Senate.
Yes, of course. So yeah, I've been a conservative my whole life. I come from a very conservative family. My parents moved us from the Midwest to Alabama back in the 1980s when I was a kid. And so I was raised and educated in Alabama through college, and then I went to medical school and did my medical training throughout the whole country. And 14 years ago, my husband and I was made sure I was coming back to the South, and we decided to raise our family in Mississippi. So we've been here for 14 years. I've been running his medical practice as a medical administrator for over a dozen years. And, so I know all about medicine. I know all about the corruption and the government overreach in medicine. I've been working in that for decades. But as we were expanding our own businesses and developing new businesses in Mississippi, I really got an introduction to government overreach in business and in development as well. And really started uncovering a lot of the corruption that goes along with that, all the way from the local level to the federal level. And, I just felt like I'm the kind of person that steps in when I see a problem. I try to step in and fix it. And so that's why I stepped into this race.
So you have made statements. I've seen some of your mailers where you talk about standing with the president to drain the swamp and then stopping the spending spree. We talk about that quite a bit here on the program with our debt now at $38 trillion, and looks like we'll be producing near $2 trillion deficits for as far as the eye can see. Any specific priorities or ideas, proposals you have to get a little bit more fiscal responsibility going on up in Washington?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of them. I mean, I think anytime, especially like when we're talking about healthcare, one of the things is getting the government out of healthcare spending. But for me, I think one of the big things I see is the corruption in Washington that's really causing the spending to go out of control. I mean, one of the things that I have focused on is transparency and accountability in Washington, especially with our legislators. And when you have legislators in there who are taking money from lobbyists, the people who are paid to affect legislation are paying the people who are making legislation, you end up having a huge conflict of interest. And I think that's one of the things we're dealing with right now.
Would you support legislation that would ban members of Congress from individual stock trading?
Absolutely, absolutely. So some of the things that I have really focused on and pushed, for my campaign, things that I have pledges that I have made are supporting legislation to ban stock trading, individual trading for all legislators and their spouses. Term limits is a big one. So I have already signed the term limit pledge, and I have vowed to co-sponsor legislation to enact term limits. Banning former legislators from actually lobbying for foreign countries. I think that's very important. And of course, finance reform. To me, just, having lobbyists paying legislators is such a huge conflict of interest. And that's one of the things right now we see that right now, especially with Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. If your listeners are interested, they can go to spendingcindy.com and you can see the amount of money that she's taken from lobbyists, $300,000 from lobbyists, and spent over $500,000 on luxury vacations and a dozen Vegas trips and limousines and home improvement projects. I mean, these are the things when you're in the pockets of lobbyists, how can you be enacting change that's for the best thing for your state? Not only for your country, but more specifically for your state, when you have the lobbyists who are the ones that are telling you what kind of legislation they want passed.
We were just talking about, if you caught us, this bill that was introduced by Senator Rand Paul that would further and really completely ban even legal immigrants from participating in several of the federal programs. Would you have voted for that legislation?
I would have, absolutely. So I am definitely a fiscal conservative. And so, when you run a business, or, even when you're running your own household, right? I mean, you're looking at every single line item and everything, any place that you can cut spending, you need to be cutting spending. And so I was listening to you earlier, and you're talking about how, in the grand scheme of things, maybe this isn't a lot of money, considering how huge our debt is right now and what our deficit is. But it's important to go line by line and to cut spending where you can. And this is absolutely, I wish that we had, I look at Tim Burchett in Tennessee when he has his, he's giving kind of his play-by-play analysis of what's going on, what he's voting, how he's voting, why he's voting that way. I think we need more of that. That's the kind of transparency that I'm talking about. I mean, it takes, 2 minutes to get on social media and to tell the voters, the people that you're representing, this is why I'm voting this way.
He produces those videos. He produces those videos, publishes them on a regular basis. I watch them as well. Right. Is this something you would pledge to do if you were elected, Sarah, that you would...
Absolutely.
You would produce that sort of communications on a regular basis to the people of Mississippi?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am very transparent. I like to communicate with people. I think our representatives need to be doing more communicating. And I mean, not only town halls. I mean, I understand that they're busy and it's hard to come back. It's hard to host town halls, but these are the things that people want to know. So social media is a great way to do that. Social media, that's a great avenue. It's something that, I mean, everybody's on some form of social media, to get on there and just explain what you're doing and why you're doing it.
We got a couple of minutes left. How would you overall distinguish yourself from our current senator, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things is I have a lot of real world experience. I mean, I have spent my life working in very complex systems with medical and health insurance. I've spent my life in working in business systems and things like that. But I'm also, the vows that I've made, the pledges that I have made, I am vowing to be very transparent. And, I have not taken any money from lobbyists. I vow to not take any money from lobbyists. I don't owe lobbyists anything. The only people I will owe are the voters of Mississippi.
Gotcha. So before we go, Social Security is set to become functionally insolvent by the technical financial definition. Should you be elected, that will happen while you're sitting in the U.S. Senate. Have you thought about what you may propose for rectifying that problem?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things is we have so much extraneous spending right now in other areas. I think what we really need to do is focus in on those areas where we can cut back on spending, so it doesn't become insolvent.
I see. Okay, so anything else you want the voters to know of Mississippi before we let you go here?
Yep, I want everybody to come out and vote. If you're interested in seeing where Senator Hyde-Smith has been spending her campaign dollars, go to spendingcindy.com. And, I just encourage everyone to get out and vote.
Okay. And how do you think the campaign's going so far, Sarah?
I think it's going really well. I really enjoy getting out and meeting all the people. I like talking to voters, meeting them where they are. So it's been a great experience.
When they talk to you, what do they tell you they're most concerned about?
I think most people are most concerned about the waste and the fraud. I think a lot of people feel like our senators are not really there. They have a very hard time getting in touch with their senators. They feel like the responses they get, if they get any responses at all, are very canned responses. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're out of time, but we appreciate you joining us today and talking about your campaign. Sarah Adlakah, she's a candidate for the United States Senate for the great state of Mississippi. Good luck to you, Sarah. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gerard. I appreciate it.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
So under federal law, the president is required to submit a budget for the upcoming fiscal year on, it turns out, Rhino, today, the first Monday in February. However, it doesn't look like one's coming. And I'm not being critical of the president here. It hasn't happened since 2015. Has a president submitted a budget? That shows you how much that's actually influencing what we do, right? It's law that the president says, here's a budget, and it comes over. You've seen the mockery of that, where there's carts they have to bring. That in itself tells you how screwed up we are, does it not? The fact that you got to have these rolling carts to deliver here's your budget. Oh my gosh. Oh, but the members of Congress, they stay up all night reading that, don't they? But there's no explanation, but it's just, it's not something that is just at a high profile, shall we say. We just don't seem to do it. And honestly, I'm not sure that it needs to come from the president, from the executive branch. That's our law. I get it. I don't quarrel with that, but maybe we ought to change that. Now, according to our Constitution, as you guys know, spending legislation has to originate in the people's house. But that's a little different than the full budget. That's a different matter, a different task. But today's the day. I just found that kind of interesting that it's the first, and I don't know where they came up with that, the first Monday in February under our law. Dave in Madison says, giving benefits to legal immigrants will not break the U.S. Bank, as you aptly pointed out. And I appreciate that, Dave. That doesn't mean I support it. I'm just pointing out that, guys, this has been going on for decades. This didn't just happen under Biden or Clinton or Obama, under Democrat regimes, and it got zero attention in the president's first term. The main takeaway here is there is a distinction between legal non-citizens and illegals. That's the main thing that I wish, honestly, Rhino, even on the Republican side of the aisle, we would discuss that distinction. Because I think most average people, and it's reasonable to think this. I'm not trying to be critical of them. Think, well, you're either a citizen or you're not. And if you're a citizen, you're entitled. And if you're not, you're not entitled. But that's not the case. We've passed lots of laws through the decades that make lots of the federal benefits available to legal immigrants. Now, how do they get to be legal? That is something that is up for debate. There ain't no doubt about that. And it is absolutely true that when Biden was letting scores of illegals enter the country illegally, that he rushed to give them legal status so they could qualify for these benefits, so they could, of course, vote for Dem and Democrats. No question about that. But it is important to understand we've had laws on the books forever that ban illegals from receiving benefits. We don't need any new laws. And by the way, none have been passed. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act didn't change any of that because it would be duplicative. Illegals are already ineligible. And again, that's not to say they don't get them, because we found that our systems really do suck, and they do allow.
To put into perspective how long Cubans, for example, have had legal protected status as legal immigrants. Remember the movie Scarface?
Yeah.
At the beginning with the Cuban encampment?
Yeah.
Those refugees came from the boat people.
Great point.
And that movie came out in 1983.
When all that was going on.
The boat people started in the 80.
Reagan. I remember it. The boat people. And look, I would have to say, for the most part, you couldn't help but see the images of these people. And there's a human side of that. These were people that essentially had to run out of their country, escape their country because bad people were in charge. Now, that's still happening, by the way. And the president's about to break the back of Cuba. And I'm with him, man. I'm pulling for him because it's freaking ridiculous. And why the young people in this country, do they know that's the system that they want to implement in this country?
Yes and no. They've been brainwashed to believe that any time communism or socialism has ever been tried, that it failed because it was not real communism or real socialism.
Just wasn't implemented right? That's what they'll tell you.
AKA, it wasn't implemented in a perfect world.
Ah, okay. Exactly. They're freaking wrong, as you know, and they're misguided. They need to carry their happy butts down to Cuba and live in that environment. They couldn't make it a day. Right?
Yeah, they might could make it a day.
Only because they're surviving.
Because they would take with them wealth that they gained in a capitalistic society.
That's exactly what I was about to say. They're surviving on the remnants of what they were able to cart over with them. But yeah, once that runs out, then what? But you and I talked about it last week.
Roll stogies.
Exactly. The images of the streets with the 1950s and 60s vehicles. And now they're about to run out of gas because the president, and look, he's following the Ronald Reagan playbook to a great extent. I mean, Ronald Reagan essentially, I think, blew up the Soviet Union economically without ever firing a shot. Because I'm telling you, they were building, we were in an arms race. Even as a college student, I got fascinated with that and started reading a lot about that. It bothered me. I mean, it's like, dang, these people are going to unleash nuclear Armageddon on us. They were preparing for it, was the Soviet Union.
I mean, they still brag about the possibility on Russian state media.
Of what?
Of using Cuba for offensive purposes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh,
on their media?
They'll pull up a map of the eastern United States, and Cuba's in red, and they'll have a big line drawn that's the range of missiles they could put in Cuba.
Well, what the president's doing through his actions in Venezuela is he's cutting off their supply of energy, of oil. And now the reports are, this was early last week, it was estimated they had about 2 weeks, 3 weeks of gas left. And that's dwindling. I can't imagine how the society, how it can survive in that case. But there are a lot of people, they'd like to get the hell out of there, but if they try, they get killed. Look at what's happening in Iran. Man, there's a bunch of saber rattling going on right now. This president ain't playing around with that. And I got to say it again, just think about how much better the world would be off if Iran returned to its grandeur of the transformation to just primitive ideology, primitive, brutal. And then the same with Cuba. If Cuba were not under the reins of communism and dictators, look at Venezuela, once a thriving nation, sitting on a bunch of dang oil that could make them super rich. But no, when it gets in the hands of a few, it's amazing to me how those people who would, I guess, hold themselves as socialists and redistributionists and collectivists, how it's only them who benefits. The rest of the people don't.
Because, and I'll give you a little mental exercise to do the next time you see any footage of any of these protests. Just pay really close attention. Look at each individual person, and you'll notice something. Every single one of these crazy collectivists, socialists, communists, liberals, and leftists, when they're showing their butt in public, they are convinced that they are the main character of a movie being made about their life.
That is true.
Look at how they carry themselves. Look at the things they say. They sincerely believe that they are the next Che Guevara. They are the next face of a revolution, and they're going to be in the movies.
And on T-shirts worn by young communists running around with cell phones and expensive cars and eating.
That's the kind of overinflated ego and delusions of grandeur that run rampant on the left.
That is so true. Half an hour of Middays returns after this break. Stay with us.
Talking about you, but it all depends on what you do. It ain't too bad the way you using me, 'cause I sure am using you to do the things you do.
From the Seabrook.com. Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
On stable condition,
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. The Dow up 477 today. It was in the red pre-market, but it has flipped around. The president's made some announcements, it looks like, concerning trade with India, and I think investors like that. And then the NASDAQ's up 187. Initially, it was down because Oracle came out and said, we're going to spend a whole bunch more money on AI and building out their AI capability. And the investors say, man, you guys are spending a lot of money here. We need to, as they say, show me the money here from a return perspective. So it kind of dampened, shall we say, Rhino, the AI trade. And the Bitcoin, I don't know what to say. Man, that kangaroo is hopping around on that deal like crazy. And then crude oil, I'm happy to report, down $3, still over 60. And it had fallen as much as about $10 down to $55 in the last couple of weeks, up then to about 65, now down to 62. All the analysts in that industry all say it's going to kind of settle in that $58 to $65 range for a fairly extended period of time. I think that means you could expect, what does that mean to us, the price of gas to stay fairly level about where it is right now. Not a whole lot to the upside, not a whole lot to the downside. Of course, the summer driving season, the new blends and so forth, usually means you're going to pay a little more once the summer rolls around. But in general, it seems to be fairly stable. I caught a great interview this morning with the CEO of Exxon, and he was talking about how they are working to power our data center build-out, being an energy company. And these projects that we've talked about out in West Texas in particular around the Permian Basin, where they're going to have these kind of isolated, purpose-built, contained projects that would host new data center build-outs where all the power would be produced for those data centers that draw a lot of power, obviously, all as part of the project. So he sees that as kind of the future in our data center development and construction, where data centers and new power would be close and part of, kind of on a self-contained type basis. It's kind of what happens in Madison County here, up the street. All the new transmission, which is very short, in distance and generation capabilities being built out by Entergy to power the AWS campuses in Madison County. It's all close. So very short distance, not dedicated to it, which is what the Exxon CEO is talking about, dedicated power generation and transmission to new data centers. West Texas happens to be a perfect place to do that, because you got the oil right there, the natural gas right there, you got all the delivery infrastructure, you've got the power companies, and you've got land that's kind of prime for this sort of construction. So good news on that front. Fascinating interview with him, the Exxon CEO, also talking about how the president's deregulation of the oil and gas industry is, in fact, not only is that increasing their exploration activity and investments, but the other thing he talked about is how they are utilizing AI to strip out a lot of the administrative costs in their operation. And in their case, it's not what most of us are accustomed to, the generative AI. You feed a prompt to the AI tool, the generation tool, and it feeds you back some content. Could be text, could be graphics, video, all the various content that they are capable of producing. But no, he's really talking about agentic AI being introduced and integrated in their operational systems. And a giant company like an Exxon, they're constantly reviewing their operational systems. All big companies are, to try to figure out how to do things more efficiently on a more streamlined basis. And he did mention that today, that they've got huge projects underway to introduce agentic AI into much of their operational processing to pull costs out. Makes perfect sense to me. Ben from Madison points something out. You're right. This is pretty big, Ben. The Texas Senate seat that was flipped should motivate every Republican House member. Don't sleepwalk through this election. I think this seat was a plus 17 Trump district in 24. That should concern every conservative. That is exactly right. And by the way, folks, now to clarify, this was a state Senate seat, but it was a deep red district that the president did win rather handily in 2024. And the Democrats took this Texas state Senate race, by the way, a district that has long been dominated by Democrats. Now, it's hard to say what all the factors were that contributed to this, but the bottom line is it is a notch in favor of the Democrats, and I agree, Ben, it should be instructional to our Republican friends. Do not sit on your laurels. Do not be complacent, talking about the House members, all of which are, of course, up for re-election or in those vacated seats. Candidates that will, on the Republican side, that are running for those seats in each of the 435 across the nation. So this is something Republicans and Democrats are, of course, celebrating it. We're telling you, our mojo's back, and the Republicans are trying to downplay it a little bit. The president did weigh in on the race. He urged voters Saturday to back the Republican candidate. Wambsganss, I think is the way you pronounce it, Rhino. It's an interesting name, Wambsganss is the name of the Republican candidate that did not prevail in the race. But no doubt, this is a concern, and hopefully Republicans are paying attention to it because it could be a bit of a predictor of the midterms. Not always, but it could be. And then in some of the sort of generic polls that are typical this time of year during a midterm election year, the Democrats are handily defeating Republicans in a sort of a generic poll. Who would you rather have? Republicans score pretty good on immigration, although they've lost a lot of their favor even there, and that's why the president has backed off somewhat and seems to be being a little more lax on his immigration policies, working with Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, oh boy, isn't he something? The minority leader over there in the U.S. Senate. And, of course, he's wanting ICE agents to have body cams, not to wear masks, to announce themselves in certain settings, a host of other reforms he's looking for. Does appear the president is on board with some of those, although we couldn't get the funding measure through, and so we do have a partial government shutdown underway right now for certain government services. That's not expected to last very long. I saw an interview this morning with Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. He predicted this thing would be resolved by the end of the day, if not in tomorrow, to get the government back open. So we'll certainly see where that is going. Reese in Clarksdale says, thanks for that note, by the way, Ben. You're absolutely right. That was a pretty big deal over the weekend. They vote on Saturday. Right, Rhino? In Texas, I believe they vote on Saturday.
Well, it was a special election.
So is that on Saturday when it's a special election? Or yeah, but you're right. It was a special election. Only that one, I believe, in the state.
Yeah, they were the only candidates on the ballot. And that's one of the ways Republicans are kind of downplaying it, is it was a single election on a special election.
Hard to get the vote out.
In January. Yeah. After a cold snap. It was going to be hairy either way to get anybody to go out to vote. But because Remitt had, 3-point margin he almost won it outright by?
Yeah, yep.
In the initial primary?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So Taylor Remitt, the Democrat candidate who ended up winning that race, and I agree. I don't know how instructional it is, honestly. But I will say this, it just feels like the Democrats As is typically the case, they're a little more energized around a midterm. The party that's opposite the one that holds the White House, that's typically the case. And it comes down to getting out the vote. It's kind of a sad thing that it's just here in America, we seem to be a bit complacent on just going out and voting. And don't forget, when's our primary? March the 3rd coming up. You can... some of the early voting is available now, I believe, right, Rhino? We have a schedule on that. Maybe we need to share that with the folks on absentee voting and so forth coming up for the March 3rd primary. Reese in Clarksdale says, as you know, budgets just get in the way of spending. Oh, man. It seems like that is the case. Well, we're coming right back with the final segment of Middays on this Monday, followed by Ricky Matthews, SuperTalk Outdoors. Stay with us.
The biggest fools ever hit the big time, and all I gotta do is act naturally.
Polyumpa, Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Then put your little hand in mine. There ain't no hill or mountain we can't climb. Babe, I got you, babe.
Okay, so I misspoke. March the 10th. March the 10th. I was off by a week. That is primary election day in the state of Mississippi. March the 10th. Boy, that's just around the corner. So we've got one U.S. Senate seat on the ballot, as well as, of course, all 4 of our House seats. The absentee ballot applications became available on January the 9th. Earliest day to vote in person, absentee, January the 26th. That was just last week, a week ago exactly. And then registration deadline, February the 9th. That would be coming up next week, this time next week, next Monday. In-person absentee voting, of course, available at your county circuit clerk's office on a daily basis. And then also on Saturday, 8 to 12 on the 28th of February, the 7th of March. And let's see, if we have a runoff, that would go up sometime after March. I don't see the date on this calendar when the runoff would be. Okay, it would be April the 7th. So primary election day, March the 10th. In the event a runoff is required, April the 7th. Once again, between that 10th and 7th, that's slightly less than a month, you could vote absentee if you qualify. Remember, in Mississippi, excuse-based absentee voting. You've got to sign an affidavit indicating the reason why you cannot vote in person on Election Day, and then you would be permitted voting absentee. So there you go. That's the calendar. Just once again, March the 10th. Man, coming up so soon, right around the old corner, as the saying goes. We'll be all over that. Looking forward to that. And then the Secretary of State, of course, has a much more detailed calendar on their website because it also includes instructions for the clerks, those that help out with the voting process and so forth, lots of other instructions. But as far as just the voters are concerned, again, March the 10th would be it. So you were going to say something earlier about the Epstein files, just a trove of information, right, released over the weekend, and journalists are just digging into that and having a field day, as well as just these folks that like to go out and talk about that kind of stuff. What some of the things you saw?
Oh, yeah. One of the things that's been getting a lot of attention is a menu for visitors to Epstein's Island. It's a full legal-size page menu of drugs you could have delivered to your hotel or cabin or cabana or whatever the heck you were renting or lodging in on Epstein Island. Anything from cocaine to dexedrine to Dilaudid to Percocet, Valium, Klonopin, Xanax, LSD, marijuana, ketamine, ecstasy. Pretty much anything you can think of, anything they warned you about in DARE class, it's there, and it's got the little category and the suggested dose or the amount of time it's going to last you. Like for cocaine, it's a stimulant. It'll last you 30 minutes if you snort it. But yeah, it's a whole menu with a minimum purchase of 500 units with a decreasing price per unit if you get it in bulk and a special charge if you order less than the minimum of 500.
Sure. It's just a big island of constant sin, it appears, if you could call it that. Some people may not think that's the case, but it's certainly people that are looking for something, shall we say, that's maybe not terribly productive, ingesting drugs and philandering and so forth.
And Elon's name popped up a bunch in it. There was one example of him. I think it was when he was married to Tallulah Riley. The email was basically him saying, "Hey, me and Tallulah want to come party." And Epstein forwarded it to Ghislaine and said, "Deal with this." And Ghislaine sent back to Elon, "We're kind of done with the partying for right now, but when it starts back up, we'll let you know."
Gosh, dog. Mo says, "I'm not sure preventing legal immigrants from receiving public benefits would pass constitutional muster." I'm not sure, Mose. I don't know that the Constitution gets into that level of detail, but again, the fact that they are eligible is a direct result of legislation that has passed and been enacted. And now we have legislation that's been enacted, specifically the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the president's signature legislative achievement that in fact bans most legal immigrants from participating in these programs. Senator Rand Paul wanted to add to that by eliminating those which got a carve-out in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, were accepted. So let's see, what else did we have here? I think that's about it for today. We're out of time. It's a Monday. Back in the Element Wealth studio again with you tomorrow. Ricky Matthews, SuperTalk Outdoors up next. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.